I think most of the market participants and pundits are at the place where they think the Fed is nearing the end of rate hikes. Now, whether there's another 25 basis points in the May meeting, whether there's a further 25 after that, another 50 basis points, yet to be determined. I'm now moved into the camp where I would like them to pause for 3 months. And I'll tell you why I say that. I've noticed that rent in most cities outside of the coastal region has rolled over 20%, not yet reflected in the CPI data, the way that CPI is calculated. That's a mistake, should be fixed, because that's very anti-inflationary. So right now the CPI says we're at 6.1% inflation. I think the truth is we're more near 4.5%. But the one that's bothered me the most since you and I last talked is the data I'm getting from my own CEOs in mid-cap and small-cap companies. Liquidity for loans has completely dried up in the last 2 weeks. And I'll give you an easy way to look at that. Let's say you're a company doing 50 million in sales, 100 employees. At any one time, 60 to 90 days of your sales are tied up in receivables with big box retailers or whoever else you're selling to. And you used to be able to factor that, in other words, turn it into cash for about 7 to 9%. Today, those rates have gone from 17 to 29%, all in a matter of about 20 days as a result of what's occurred with the Silicon Valley Bank meltdown and the concerns regional banks now have about liquidity measurement. So that is in itself doing the Fed's work, and I would very much like the Fed to look at that data from senior loan officers as soon as they get it, because there's a big problem brewing here. You can't get any capital. You can't raise money anymore from a regional bank because regardless of whether the Fed guarantees the loan or not, the loan officer is saying, we know it's going to get tighter. We know regulation's coming. We're going to wait and see what occurs in addition to rate hikes, which make it even harder to be profitable. I think we have a real soul searching to do in America about how many of these regional banks are going to survive and how many people want to support them in perpetuity, regardless if they're ever profitable again. And so this transition will reflect itself in loans to small and mid-cap businesses, which represents 70%. That's 70% of the economy. And I think the Fed's work is done. I think they're going to have a lot of anti-inflation pressure by the fact that they're going to slow business down because they can't borrow money. I think the market should be the market. I don't think we should guarantee every depositor in every bank everywhere. If we let the market be the market, there'll be consolidation. There'll be super regionals that occur. We have 3,000 banks in addition to the money center banks. Maybe the country can run on 1,000 or 500 or 800. I don't know what it is. But I know there's no political appetite or voter appetite or taxpayer appetite to guarantee every single bank manager everywhere, because there's a lot of idiot bank managers that have been sitting around with free money for 20 years that don't know how to make money in rising rate environments and have no clue how to manage risk. Look what happened to Silicon Valley Bank. That's going to happen 10, 20, 30 more times. I have no interest in bailing them out. They're idiot managers. It's not my fault. Let the market get rid of them, and it's, as it will. The market's good at doing that. I mean, obviously, you can ask about the board. You can ask about the San Francisco Fed in the context of the Silicon Valley Bank. The oversight was either negligible or not there. Obviously, this is a wake-up call to every bank board, and that also in itself is going to put a lot of scrutiny onto the balance sheets of these banks. And frankly, the only job you have as a bank manager is duration and risk. That's it. That's the only job you have. And if you can't do that, why are you a bank manager? Why aren't you fired a long time ago? At Silicon Valley Bank, they weren't even doing that. I have no idea what they were doing, but they weren't managing a bank. You could say the same thing right now about First Republic. Who wants to put their money there? Signature Bank's already gone. How many more are there? This conversation is not going to end anytime soon until the patina has been scraped through the system to find out who was not managing their bank and who shouldn't be managing their bank now. And I can tell you, taxpayers do not want to pay for that in perpetuity. Well, you don't know. That's the whole point. The way it's manifesting itself in the way that I can measure is you can't borrow money. So credit has dried up completely. You can ask anybody that, particularly down at the regional level. And so as a result, that is going to slow the economy. You just don't know when and how fast. No, I won't. Why would I? The big banks are going to be utilities, servicing the other 10 sectors of the economy. And who would ever buy the stock of a regional bank? You'd have to be crazy to do that. I mean, it's just a binary Las Vegas. Is it a 0 Or when does it go to zero? Those are the two questions you can ask yourself. Why would you buy that? But what's the point? What is the possible reason that the value of a regional bank is going to go up when there's crushing regulation coming? Complete speculation. I mean, half the economy pundits think that rates are going to be cut by the end of the year, and half think they're going to be up at a terminal rate of 7%. The truth is nobody knows, and how fast the economy slows. And the remarkable situation we have that we've never had before is we're at full employment. Unemployment is under 4%. Now, that's never happened before in a recession, so you're going to need some massive event that gets everybody out of work. So I don't know how that's going to happen, and that's why you just don't know. I mean, clearly the best strategy now is to go buy stocks that pay dividends, that are high quality, have good balance sheets, less speculative, and the market's already done that. But to be completely out of equities now is probably risky as well, because if it's true that we're stalled out here on rate hikes, this is as good as it's going to get on treasuries, and it's still not beating inflation. And maybe the bigger issue is, what is terminal inflation? Maybe it never gets back to 2% again. Maybe it's more like 3.5%, 4%. All of these are unknowns, which is why these are difficult times in terms of what it takes to be a successful investor. Well, we've been shuffling money around from regional banks. You know, we run a pretty big private equity portfolio, venture portfolio. When we give out money to a company, we never used to ask them, where do you put it? But since the events at Silicon Valley Bank, part of what we're doing now is completely taking inventory of where our cash that we invested in these companies is sitting. And if it's in a regional bank, we're pulling it and putting it into a money center bank. We've been doing that for weeks now. I see no reason, no upside at all, to put money, cash. I'm talking about cash. Why would you ever put cash in a regional bank? What could you possibly think would be a good idea there? Zero. It's crazy. So we've been taking it out of those banks. And by the way, I'm not the only person doing this. I don't have a kumbaya feeling about this. I simply want to protect my LPs, my investors, from idiot bankers. And so the only way I can do that is to move it into the large money center banks. So I've opened accounts at Citibank. I've opened accounts at JP Morgan. We've moved a ton of money there because the chance of them going to zero is less than a regional bank. And by the way, this is why these regional banks are challenged. Maybe people aren't telling the truth, but try and find somebody that wants to put cash into a regional bank. Why would you do that? Well, I've been doing that as well, obviously. Alternative assets, real estate being a big one. Not commercial real estate, but certainly residential. We've also diversified from a geographic basis. We've moved some money up to Canada because they have an oligopoly system of banks, less chance that they'll go to zero. We've moved our crypto under the OSC. Our best performing asset has actually been Bitcoin since January 1st, up about 80%. So there's lots of alternative assets, but where do you keep them? And that's the real question. So we've opened accounts in Europe. Diversification is the only safety you have. And so most of our cash is being held in money center banks. We've diversified in the Canadian market as well. We invest internationally. So now for the first time ever, I have to invest time and effort. I have my own cash desk now where we simply go back through every day and say, where's our risk? Where's the cash? And I'm not the only person doing this. Yeah, I think that was a huge mistake that Justin Trudeau made. I don't think he'll do it again. That was ill-advised. I've already talked about his management skills as the CEO of Canada. I'm sure there's a change coming, so I'm not that worried about it. The chance that the Canadians actually start doing that, the Canadian oligopoly banking system, I think is very low. They've learned their lesson. That was a very bad mistake. It tainted their brand dramatically all around the world. And so that's something banks have to look at. But when you use a person's bank account as a tactical weapon against them personally, that really hurts your country's brand. And I think Canada knows that now. Well, it's a very timely topic because the IRS just yesterday announced hiring thousands more auditors. And so you have to think about what's going to be happening to individuals and small businesses in the U.S. Clearly, they're going to be audited more. So that requires you to take a lot more time to keep your records, and particularly your payroll records, in pristine condition. Because when you're audited, it's data that saves you. If you have the information, people that get into trouble in audits do not keep their information in an orderly fashion. But there's something else about the IRS. Everybody thinks that they're your enemy. The tax code, everybody has to realize, is just, the two certainties in life. One is death and one is taxes. So you have to live with the tax code. But people that understand that you have to figure out a way to be compliant with the IRS also know they also provide you with some flexibility. I'll give you an example, because I have this in my own portfolio. Let's say you're a business and you owe the IRS $500,000 coming out of the pandemic. You can't pay them back, but you had employees in 2020 and 2021. Now, the IRS has unlimited resources to chase you, and they will. So you have to come to an agreement with them. Most people don't know this, but if you apply for your employee retention credits, and let's say you had 50 employees, and you kept them on payroll in the first 4 months or the first 4 quarters of 2020 and the first 2 quarters of 2021, you're entitled to a check of about $500,000. That's around $26,000 per employee. But the IRS isn't stupid. They'll deduct the $100,000 from you and send you a check for $400,000. But now you're clean. Now you don't owe them anything anymore. You still owe taxes on the $400,000 you got in the employee retention credit, but all of a sudden you've cleaned your books up with the IRS. So I think this employee retention credit, which is still available for the next 23 months, is going to become very, very important to businesses that are in the hole with the IRS, and there are millions of those companies. Millions of companies have not paid the IRS their tithe. Now the IRS is giving them a gift. It's like a box wrapped with wrapping paper on it saying, we can help you because we've got the employee retention credit as part of the program that you can get if you had W-2 employees. So I'm working very, very closely with all of my companies on this to make sure that they file if they're eligible. And for those that want to learn more, I've set up wondertrust.com. Anybody can go there. I'm on a mission for the next 23 months, because if you're in trouble with the IRS and you owe the money, you've got to go after these credits. You know, the only thing that matters for the U.S. is what is the default currency of the world. And secondly, who brokers the power? So those are the two issues that are at stake. Now, obviously, the world for a very long time has used the U.S. dollar as its default currency because it basically is the price of all commodities, whether it's gold or oil, right on down precious metals. And so I don't see that changing because nobody's going to take the Chinese yuan instead, no sovereign. Not because the Chinese people are bad people, it's just that nobody trusts the Chinese government. So that idea is going to stall. Would I exchange my US dollars for Macron euros? Not a chance in hell would I do that. Maybe I'd consider the Swiss franc, and I do hold a position in Swiss francs, but that's a well-managed country. You can't tell me France is a well-managed country. I think really the only country that holds up the euro, and everybody talks about this in whispers, but I'll just blurt it out, is Germany. Without Germany, there is no euro. So it's interesting to hear what he has to say, and I respect him as a politician, but it's irrelevant to me as an investor. These ideas are bankrupt. There's no way on earth anything's going to happen in the U.S. dollar. Now, regarding leadership in policy on defense, that's a different topic. Many people speculate that perhaps the Biden administration isn't being as tough as they should be. All of this will be debated. We are going into an election cycle that's starting remarkably early. That in itself is just politics. I care about policy. Now, I think Putin's very surprised as how well organized Europe and the U.S. got. I think we shouldn't be messing around with Putin. We should give them more money and make him come to the negotiating table, because too many people are losing their lives. And he's not going to do that until he knows the war is lost. And so, he's a classic dictator, and the way you get those guys to the table is you say, look, you're going to end up like Mussolini if you don't solve for this, because people are going to be hurting in your own country, and they're starting to. So you better start negotiating.